Hi everybody, welcome to our Wine Wednesday. Donna and Bob here. Thanks for joining us. So last week we talked about sparkle bubbles, and that evening with our sparkle bubbles, Bob made incredible ribs, and they went really well. So I highly recommend that. Of course, your ribs might not be as good as Bob's, but it went really well with our sparkle bubbles. So anyway, without further ado, here's Bob.
Well, hello, everybody. After that ringing endorsement for my barbecue ribs, it did go very well. We spoke about that last week about how most things go with sparkles, and ribs were a stretch, but it actually worked very well. One thing we didn't finish with last week was how to stopper up sparkles when you don't finish it. We tend to finish bottles of wine, but for whatever reason, when we have sparkling wine, we tend not to finish it.
Unless Christy's here.
My daughter. Anyway, one of these is what you need. This is a closer for sparkling wine. It works really good, and it's very simple. You'll just place it in the bottle, push it down, and clasp it like that, and it grabs the edges of the bottle. It'll last, 3-4 days in the refrigerator. So, good investment. $6 or so. Okay, so enough for that. Anyway, we're going to talk about a little bit of European and a little bit of West Coast today. One big difference between European wines and their counterparts on the West Coast of the United States is how ripe the fruit tastes in your mouth, how big the fruit is. It's not thin and watery, it's big and rich. And that's the big thing, the big difference between California, Oregon, Washington, and Europe. European wines tend to have less fruitiness. They have more earthiness, more minerality. It's not big fruit. West Coast, on the opposite side, much more fruit forward, not sweet. And we talked about that, I believe, in the first episode. Sweetness and fruit are not the same thing. They're mutual. They can be mutually exclusive. So, big rich fruit is just wonderful in wine, and we like that. With that in mind, we're going to talk about one of the favorites of the white wine drinking world, and that is Pinot Grigio, or as we call it in the United States, Pinot Gris. And that's Gris, Pinot Gris. It is not Gris. I've heard that many times. Pinot Gris. Pinot Grigio from Italy. It varies greatly in style and really greatly in price. You can get the very inexpensive ones that are really watery and boring, and I don't even know why you'd waste your time drinking them. But they're real light, to the better ones, which are much more complex. Apples, pears, again, that earthiness, that minerality that is so prevalent in European wines. Pinot Gris, on the other hand, which Oregon makes a lot of it. Oregon is Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris. Pinot Noir is the red wine, Pinot Gris is the white wine. That's the two wines that are most favored out of that area. You get this nice, rich mouthfeel, this roundness, this softness in your mouth. There's lots and lots of fruit, but not dry.
What do you mean when you say dry?
Well, dry is, in the wine world, is really a very simple term that is completely misunderstood by most people. Dryness in wine is only about sugar. You have yeast and you have sugar. The yeast eats up the sugar. If it eats up all the sugar, the wine is dry. So dryness is how little sugar is still left in the wine. Most wines are relatively dry. Most well-made wines are relatively dry. And so that's why your fruit level is so important to make up for that. But anyway, the Pinot Gris, peaches, pears, apples, wonderful with oysters and clams and most seafoods, and amazingly, it's great for Asian food. And to paraphrase a popular commercial, I do not often drink white wine, but when I do, I drink Pinot Gris. Stay thirsty, my friends. It's one of my favorite commercials. Anyway.
So does more alcohol mean more flavor, or is it just more alcohol?
Well, what you get more alcohol if you have more sugar in the grapes, okay? So if you have more sugar in the grapes, it means the grapes are more ripe. And if they're more ripe, they're fruitier. So the dryness doesn't necessarily mean more flavor, but it usually, when you have that sugar to get higher alcohol, you usually have riper grapes, which then gives you more fruit. So, yeah. So our favorites in that area are, in Oregon, are King Estate and Willamette Valley Vineyards. And it is Willamette. It's not Willamette. It's Willamette. They like to say Willamette, damn it. And that's how you remember it. A to Z, Ponzi. There's lots of good ones in California too, but those four are the four that we drink the most out of Oregon. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and taste both a Pinot Grigio. This is Albino Armani 2017. There's the Pinot Grigio. And then the aforementioned King Estate from Oregon. Don and I were lucky enough to go there a few years ago. They are absolutely wonderful to us. We went to Willamette Valley Vineyards also. Wonderful places. Highly recommend going to see those folks. So let's go ahead and taste them, Don, and see what we got. So I'm going to do the Pinot Grigio first.
Okay.
And the King Estate second. So for me, there's much more acidity in the Pinot Grigio. I could feel it kind of puckering up my tongue, and that is from the fact that the wasn't as fruity. It wasn't as the alcohol was a little bit lower. The grapes weren't quite as weren't quite as ripe, and so it had more of a acidic twang to it.
Oh, that minerality?
Yeah, well, there's some minerality in there. Yeah. No, there's some minerality and earthiness in that that is non-existent in my mind in the King Estate. As soon as it went in mouth, it was nice and round and soft, and this is what we drink. We, our white wine of choice is Pinot Gris, and we don't drink much Pinot Grigio, but we do drink a lot of Pinot Gris from Oregon and California. So
it's all about what they like.
It is. No, and that goes back to rule one, first day. Drink what you like, and if you like it, it's good, and if you don't like it, it's not good. And just for number's sake, the Pinot Grigio from Italy was 12.5% alcohol, and the Pinot Gris from King Estate was 13.5. So, that little bit extra alcohol. Some of you drink for alcohol.
It does mean more flavor.
Well, it does in this case. So anyway, everybody, it was great seeing you again today. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Cheers.